Hi everyone, my name is Anne. Thanks for joining us here on Art on the Creek. Together we are going to complete watercolor lesson number 13. Can you believe it? Look at that beautiful subject I've got for us today. These tulips I picked up at Costco and they are just so happy in my kitchen that I thought we could try and paint some of these beautiful blooms. Are you ready? Let's go paint some tulips. Well, I have all of our usual supplies. I've already taped off the edge of our watercolor block. And if you don't know what the supplies are, I'll put a description in the bottom of the video there where you can click on more if it doesn't expand all the way for you, and then you can see all of these supplies that we're using. I've got a little bit left over from one of the last things I painted, but I'm just going to leave it because it's not going to bother me one bit. Okay, the reason I chose this photo, because number one, these tulips are really pretty, but you can see all the way down to the bulb, and you could do, there's so much you could do with this. If you're an accomplished painter and you're watching this video, you can paint the whole array. For those of us here where I'm teaching beginner level, I'm just going to choose one of these. We're going to include the bulb, but I'm just going to choose one of the flowers. So right in front, there's a little bulb that is kind of sitting there nicely with some growth coming out of it, and it connects to a flower that's not quite open. But the one just next to it to the left, that's the one we're going to draw, because I really like the flower partially open, but I like the way the bulb is of the one that's kind of closed. So we're going to combine a couple of things here. And that's something you can always do with your art, is make it your own. So what I'm going to do, and actually this 5x7 size is really nice because you can take this and make it into a greeting card for spring. And boy, it certainly is that time of year, isn't it? I'm just going to put here the little, kind of a little teardrop shape, not making it symmetrical because things in nature tend to not be symmetrical. And we'll go ahead and leave a little spot there for this extra growth piece coming out. And then you can take your kneaded eraser. I'm using a white one today. Yours might be gray like this one, but I'm going to use this white one. And then you can pinch the end of it to this narrow portion here. And you can lift up parts that you don't need. So I really like that about these kneaded erasers. And now for this next portion, if you want to go ahead and use a ruler, you certainly can. I'm going to turn my paper and kind of create this stem coming out. I'm holding the pencil with the eraser back here, and that will help you hold it a little bit better to draw a straight line. And let's see, now looking at that bulb, we have, or excuse me, the bloom, we've got this front petal that comes below the green there. And then it comes up into kind of this teardrop shape, a little bit of rough edge at the top, and then it comes down like this. Now this one behind it comes in front of it and wraps around this way, and then it has some curves in it like so. I think this might be, this is the end of the petal here, and then there's another red petal back here. So there's a little piece of white right here, and then this red petal, I'm just very lightly going to draw that in like so. And then over here, this is the other petal that comes up and has these beautiful scalloped edges. And it comes down like so. And then we'll go ahead and put another petal. Gosh, I couldn't think of the word. A petal in the back. Alrighty, now for the leaves that go around it. I really like, gosh, some of these leaves. The one on the right has some interesting shape to it. So let's pull that up this way and get that dramatic crease in it. And we'll come up to a point. And it goes out. Now it's going to come behind the stem. a little bit because it'll be like wrapped around it. And so this part is curled in like a little cup here, and the lower part is as well. So now we can erase this portion. There. And then we want to put one more leaf in just to give it some interest. And there's one there that looks like it's kind of crammed into the glass, but it's also bent. So let's put that one right about here. And I'll just make it go out. And it can come down like so. Now I think we are good to go. So let's go ahead and start with our number 4 this time. Instead of our number 6, I'm going to start with the number 4. Now the paints that we're going to use, this is our Winsor Newton Cotman set, and I like to have the swatch card with me so I know which color is which. So I'm going to start with alizarin crimson, and that's going to be up here. So the first thing I'm going to do is go into that alizarin crimson with a wet brush, and then I'll tap it off on the paper towel, and I'm going to start in the middle and on the bottom and just kind of bring that pigment up and around in a little bit of a spray motion, like so. We can go in with a second layer of that alizarin crimson. Now this is damp into wet, and we can just repeat what we've done here. There we are. And now let's do just a touch of the ultramarine blue. That's this one right here. It's right next to the alizarin crimson. You can make a little well of that in your palette. And we're just going to tap that along the very bottom of this tulip. Now that will give us the shadow, and that blue will blend to make a nice purple. And let's see, there are a few little veins or striations coming up there, so I'm going to go ahead and add those in, and they might look weird because they're blue right now, but we can go in and blend some alizarin crimson in with them later. Now with that same alizarin crimson, we'll do this side over here, and remember we have these yellowish white scallops, so what I'm going to do here is just stay along that outside edge, and we'll come in a little bit on that one and up here. And now with your brush, it might be helpful if you want to squeeze this brush to make it flat, and you're just going to go in and cut those lines to where they come into the white. There, like so. And now we're going to repeat that over here. Pull that red pigment out into the white. There we are. Now there's a little space in here, and that will be all red as well. So let's fill that in pretty carefully. We don't want to go beyond our little petal here. This one is kind of tucked in underneath. And now this part under here, this is the underside of this petal, so it is going to have some red underneath it, but not the whole thing, just a little bit of it. And right along this edge, very lightly, we've got some red. All right, we're going to let that dry. And let's go into our sap green, and that is this green right here. So right in the same well where you had your ultramarine, you can just add this green, that's fine. Get your brush wet, agitate the pigment, and then bring it over to your palette. Now we're going to paint this stem, and I'm going to start by just going down the left side. Doesn't matter, you can go down the middle, whatever you want to do. and bring that up. That's going to be just solid green. And now while that's still wet, go into your ultramarine, mix that in with that sap green so we can get it a little bit darker. And on the right hand side, we'll just add that. And we'll come up at a little angle here at the bottom, and that will help us with our shadow. Keeping that along this side. We're going to pretend the light is coming from this way. Dry. Whenever you're working with watercolor, you don't want to paint next to something that is already wet because the colors will blend together. Sometimes you do want to do that, but right now we're going to let that dry. So let's go into our burnt sienna. That's this one right here. And we can go ahead and get that first layer of our bulb on. And I happen to already have a little bit of this on my palette, so I'm just going to mix it in that same well. And I'm just putting on that first layer with the burnt sienna. And remember to leave space here where we're going to put that yellow spot. All right, now I think what we're going to do is get our heat tool and give this a dry. And you can probably already tell we've taken some liberties with this because we've kind of squashed the whole thing down shorter so that it will fit on our paper. If you're using a bigger sheet of paper, you can make your stem and leaves longer. You can make your bulb a little bit bigger, however you want to do it. Now let's go into that burnt umber, and that is just the next darkest brown. And you can mix that in the same well as your burnt sienna. A little bit thicker paint this time. And now what we're going to do is create some shadows on our bulb here. So remember, our light is coming from the left. So let's paint along the right here. And this, all of this down here will be shaded because we've got this new growth coming out here. There we go. And now what we can do is to tip this a little bit. And with our wet brush here, don't want too much water. I'll have to take some of this water off. What we're going for is just a real natural look to this bulb here. So I'm just kind of trying to model the two different browns around right in there. And I kind of like the way that is going. So let me get my heat tool again and we'll dry that off. And then we can work on that little piece of growth in there. So now we're going to go into our warm yellow, and that's this one right here. It is the cadmium yellow hue. And let's mix that up here in this top portion where we haven't been yet. And now we're just going to touch the ultramarine and mix that in just ever so slightly. Just touch it with the tip of your brush and mix it in. We want this to be barely green. It'll come off as kind of an off-white. There we go. And that is right what we want to paint right here. And we can go ahead and fill in that new growth as well. We're just going to kind of very lightly have several roots coming down. And I'll zoom in here because these are very hard to see. It's very light. We can go into that brown just a little and get just a tad darker if we want. And add a few in that are just a little bit darker. There. And there's our roots. Now let's work on these big leaves. Well, actually, you know what we can do first? Let's go into that blue-green mix that we had. Add a touch more green to it. And we'll just get this one going here. Now this one was kind of yellow at the bottom. It's not completely green. So what I'm doing is I'm just putting green up to the top. And then I'll go back into that yellow, and I'll come up, and here's where you want the colors to definitely touch. There, and then that green is going to travel down there just a little bit. Can you see that? This time with our lemon yellow. And I just want you to fill in this entire leaf over here with lemon yellow. And now we're going to go into our sap green. And from the bottom, we'll fill that in. We just wanted to start at the bottom because that's where we want most of our pigment. Now go back into your ultramarine blue and mix that into the green again. And if it's looking a little too blue, go ahead and add some green back in. There we go. We're just looking for kind of a dark ruddy green. And now we're going to paint the back side of this leaf in stripes. So that is the portion that folds up. And then when that dries, then we'll go in and put in more stripes. But for now, a little bit more green in our mix. Let's get this leaf in. All right, I'm going to get the heat tool out again and dry this. Okie doke, still with our number 4. We're just going to use our number 4 for most of this project here. Now do you see how the stem has gotten really close to the color of the leaves? Let's go into our other green, this one here, the Viridian, and mix that one in a new place on your palette. Let's see, where should I put it? You can mix it in with that brown, that's fine, because we're done with the brown for now. And that brown will only serve to darken up that green, which is just what we want. Add a little bit more burnt sienna to that. And you'll see we'll get a lovely rich dark green. There we go. That's almost like the color of a pine tree. Now that this is dry, we can go ahead and take our brush and create some of those stripes in the leaf. And let's go ahead and get these in here too. And we'll leave them like that for now, and then I will show you how to make this leaf look a little bit curved this way, because right now it does look kind of flat. We do have the darker pieces folding forward, but we need to create a dip in that leaf, so we'll get to that too. In this same dark green, let's go ahead and add some veins onto this leaf here. There we go. And now I'm going to go into that ultramarine blue and mix this in with your darkest green. So now we have a really dark blue-green. And now I'm going to come here in our stem and work on this darker portion of the stem here. So you're just going to go down the right-hand side, and now we'll go back in with a wet brush, and it might help you to turn your paper whichever direction you need. If you're left-handed, you'll be doing this the opposite direction. And I'm just getting that wet so that that dark pigment can travel along the width of the stem. There we go. Now for our tulip. What we used for the roots, we can go ahead and do something very similar for the white of the tulip, because it's not really white. It's just slightly tan. So I'm adding a lot of water to that yellow mix up there, and then we'll touch into our ultramarine a couple times and just get that to kind of dull down, kicking some of it into the next palette because I really don't want a lot of this at all. And now I have some of this on my brush. Now here's a trick I want to show you. You can erase these lines, and if you wanted to do that, now is the time, because when we paint over it, the lines will still be visible. So let's go in and let's erase these lines. And we'll zoom in so you can see there are no lines there. So this would be a good time for you to refer to your reference photo again. Getting the paint on our brush and tapping it off. And now I'm going to fill this in over here and this way. And try not to touch that red too much, because you will agitate it and you don't want this area to be pink. So it's just the slightest bit of greenish yellow there on that. This area here where we have the blue and the green. Go ahead and get into your burnt sienna and just get a good amount of it on, and let's mix some more of that. And now go back into your ultramarine and add to that. We're looking for just a very dark value of a greenish gray. There we go. Yeah, I kind of like that. Let's just add some texture to this bulb here. I'm going to take a wet brush and blend that around. And this will help me to get some good, dusty, dirty looking texture. And in fact, we can bring some of this down into these roots. Now we're all done with the bulb. The only thing we have left to do is the shading on the inner leaf here. And then come up with a little dip right there. And then I've got a wet brush, and I'll blend that so it looks a little more cohesive. Let's go ahead and put some of that blue over here and down here. There we are. Now, one more dry with the heat tool. This could be a point where you could stop. But I think what I'm going to do is add just a little bit more detail to the tulip veins itself. So I'm going back into that alizarin crimson, and I'm going to take advantage of this black that's in my palette here. If you don't have black, you can mix it over here. In this one, we're just trying to get a very dark red. Not too dark, but pretty dark. You can mix it in the blue. That's about what you're looking for right there. Just a really dark, almost a true blood red. And now what I'm going to do, if we zoom in on these tulips, you'll see that there is quite a bit of veining right here at the bottom. In fact, I think this might be easier if we turn this. And there we go. I think that's a pretty good looking tulip, guys. Now, since we went to the trouble to tape this off, let's go ahead and put a background on here. So the first thing I want to do is make sure that this is dry. And I'm going to show you a way to do a background that's kind of graduated, so we don't have to worry about disturbing these roots here. So we're going to turn our painting upside down, get out your large brush, and we're just going to wet the painting on the back, just this entire piece. And when you wet your paper, you want it to be so that it has an even sheen. Try not to get the tulip wet, but let's go into that ultramarine blue, and we'll just tap some blue in. All right, I'm working in sections because this will dry out on me. So if you want to go ahead and get the whole thing wet, you sure can, but I'm going to keep working in sections, and I'm holding it so that the bulk of the pigment will drain this way. Now let's go in that red All right, and now we'll bring this over to this side and we'll come up over here. A little bit more blue. You can see right here I did touch the tulip a little bit. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to make it part of my painting. You want to get as close to that tulip as you can without hitting it because you don't want it to look like cut and paste. So there is a little bit of a challenge here. And when you see these water beads build up, you kind of want to take care of those. Let's come down over here, and I'll go around that little area for now. Trying to keep it as pale as possible down here by the roots. This is a bead that I'm talking about that we want to get rid of. I've got some red and some blue there, that's fine. Mix that together, and I'm going to get my brush real wet and just pull that away so that it's all falling up, technically, right? There, and then let's take a look at these little spots that aren't quite as rich in pigment and kind of catch those up. Now, if using your big brush is just too difficult for this, you can definitely use a smaller brush. I do have a little drop of water here on the leaf. I'm going to pick that up. Left a spot. That's actually kind of cool. I like that. Now in here, this is why I wanted to use the bigger brush. Get that real loose. And we're just going to tap in a little bit vertically here. And then I'll take my brush and just swipe very quickly and lightly over that. There we go. Now let's get this dry. Now let's deal with this bonus water droplet. I'll put a picture of a water droplet up here to the right so that you can see kind of what I'm doing. First thing I'm going to do is to take out a little bit more. And then I'm going to do one more up here. Don't be scared. This is a lot of fun to do. So when you're taking out pigment, what you're doing is you have a wet brush, you dry it off, and then you're just going to make a little circle. There. So those are our 3 droplets of water. Now what we want to do is to make a shadow, because the water droplet itself will make a shadow. So our light's coming from over here, so the shadow is going to be along this side over here. So let's get into that sap green again and go in your darkest green. Just kind of agitate that so it's about the texture of whole milk. And we're going to very carefully paint a little shadow right at that water droplet. So that's the shadow from the top part. There's also a shadow from this bottom ridge that shows up inside the water droplet. So all you have to do is put a little line. Well, and there I got that too big, so hold on. We'll put our big shadow back on there and then we'll let that one dry. You're going to put the little line right inside like that. So just, I kind of like to hold my breath. Let me get this one dry. And we'll just get that little shadow right in there. There we are. And now with a white gel pen, we can get the little highlight in. And that's going to be right here on the bottom. There you go. There are your 3 water droplets and a beautiful tulip. Let's go ahead and take this tape off. When you pull the tape off, you want to pull it away at a 90-degree angle. That's the easiest way to pull it away, and if it starts to resist at all, definitely use a heat tool. Because even though this is a low tack tape, you don't want the paper to tear. And there, my friends, is our sweet little tulip. Let's go ahead and get our liner pen. And don't forget to sign your work. It's always a good idea to sign your artwork and date it so that you know where you are in your watercolor journey when you make anything at all. Now, this is a block, so we'll go ahead and stick something in here. You can use a table knife, a butter knife. I have this little leaf gadget that came with a different block, and I just kept it because I really like it. And you just run around the adhesive. This section here tends to be a little dicey on my particular block. I don't know if you guys are having trouble with that on yours too. If you are, let me know. Because if this is a design flaw, I'm not sure I want to recommend this particular paper for future classes. At any rate, and you're going to pick off all these little guys. Thanks so much, guys. We'll see you next time for lesson number 14. Well, friends, I hope you had a good time painting this today. If not, I hope just watching me create this tulip was very relaxing for you. Sometimes that's kind of all the fun in YouTube. It's just relaxing and watching someone create something. If you do decide to paint one of these on your own, please tag me on Instagram. I would love to see your work. Thanks again. We'll see you next time. Bye now.